Are we live, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everyone to the July 12th Westfield City Council meeting. Can we stand and do the pledge, please? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, if we remain standing, Councilor Edwards is going to do our invocation this evening.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for our ability to meet as free people. We ask that you bless this city, bless this council, and bless this proceedings as we go through them tonight. All these things we ask in thy name. Amen.
Amen. Cindy Gossert, can you note the presence of a quorum, please?
Troy Patton,
Here.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Here.
Mike Johns,
Here.
Scott Fry,
Here.
Joe Edwards,
Here.
Jake Gilbert,
Here.
Scott Willis.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Thank you. Does anyone have any changes to this evening's agenda? Okay, there are no changes to tonight's agenda. First item of business will be the approval of the minutes from June 28th. Are there any additions or changes to those minutes from June 28th? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion was made by Scott Willis and seconded by Joe Edwards. Cindy, please call the roll.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. The next item on tonight's agenda is the claims docket for July 12th, 2021. Are there any questions, councilors, on the claims docket for this evening? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the claims docket for July 12th?
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Councilor Gilbert, seconded by Councilor Patton. Cindy, please call the roll.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeric,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Great. The next item on our agenda is the miscellaneous business and special presentations, and we actually have, I think, 4 presentations this evening. The first being a special presentation by Chief Rush, who will be presenting the Westfield Police Meritorious Award to Mike and Debbie Laird. Chief Rush.
Thank you.
Floor.
Good evening, Council, President Johns. On August 3rd, the Police Department will be hosting the 11th Annual Jake Laird Community Day at Quaker Park from 5 to 8. The event includes free food, live music by Dave Miller, various activities including bounce houses, face painting, balloon artists, and canine demonstrations. It also showcases the department's vehicles, equipment, and programs. We will also be raffling 10 bicycles and backpacks with school supplies. The Jake Laird Community Day is sponsored by Hamilton County residents Mike and Debbie Laird, who are here tonight, whose son Timothy Jake Laird of the Indianapolis Police Department gave his life in the line of duty on August 18th, 2004. In his honor, that the Westfield Police Department will pay tribute to Jake and promote the spirit of community by providing an evening of food and fun for the residents of Westfield. After Jake's death, the Lairds established the Jake Laird Memorial Fund, which provides funds for local law enforcement agencies in need of new equipment innovating new programs, and assisting with officer hardships. The Laird family is known as friends to numerous police agencies throughout Indiana, sponsoring programs that strengthen community relations. If I could, I'd like to have Mike and Debbie come up to the podium. Tonight is my honor, and on behalf of our department, the council, and Mayor Cook, I'd like to present this Westfield Police Department Meritorious Service Award 2021 to Mike and Debbie Laird. And it states, in recognition for your contribution, which exhibited outstanding initiative and support and reflected great credit to yourself, the department, and the city of Westfield. Underneath it has Jake Laird Community Bank. Thank you.
Again, a special thanks to Mike and Debbie, and we certainly, none of us will probably ever know what you've gone through, but we deeply appreciate everything that you and your son has done for us. Thank you. Next presentation will be an update from Jeremy Lawler on the Hawk system and the speed limit study at the city trail crossings.
Thank you, Councilor Johns. For the record, Jeremy Lawler, Director of Public Works. I'll give you a quick update on the Hawk system, specifically timing of it, and then I will hand it over to John Nail to go through the data that we collected for the trail crossing studies. So, as we've said before, or I have, the delay in the signal is lead time on materials. We do have some of the materials in stock. We should have all but the activation buttons in by the end of this week or early next week. And the contractor is on standby waiting to install once we have everything. The unfortunate part that we're dealing with right now is the activation buttons are due in the end of August. So the provider, the equipment provider, as well as our contractor are working on developing something that we can utilize temporarily to use the system. As you can imagine, you can't use it if you don't have a button to activate it. So if we can get something figured out, it'll go up as early as a couple weeks. If we have to wait till the end of August to get the activation buttons, then we are looking at late August, early September. So that's where we stand with that. We'll keep you all informed as things progress, and if we are able to move the ball forward. If there is an opportunity to install any equipment on the overhead arm, so the signal arm, we'll try to get as much of that stuff done prior to the activation buttons coming in, but I'm not comfortable removing the flashing beacons, and I don't know that it can all fit up there until we get all the equipment. So are there questions with that? Okay, well then I'll hand it off to John and he will tell us about the speed study.
One thing I'll add to that supply chain issue with the Hawk system is not unique to Hawk equipment. I just had a meeting with citizens today. They can't get standard sized ductile iron pipe in for 4 months, which is an incredible lead time. It's something that we're dealing with globally on the construction industry. So just wanted to add that color in there. So early in the spring, the council asked us to take a look at all of our trail crossings, particularly related to speed. And so the city hired A&F Engineering to do that speed study for us. Of course, here in the city of Westfield, safety is our top priority. And I'm going to present to you the results from that speed study, as well as just some commentary on kind of next steps. So we looked at 14 trail crossings in the city. 8 of them were the Monon Trail, 6 were the Midland, and A&F Engineering collected data between late May and early June on sunny days, warm days where we expect plenty of trail use and plenty of vehicular traffic. A couple things I'll point out when we think about speed and trail crossing safety. Certainly speed is the greatest factor in determining the severity of an accident with a pedestrian. There's no question about that. A pedestrian struck at 20 miles per hour has a much better chance of survival, certainly, than a pedestrian struck at 40 miles per hour. But that doesn't mean that fast trail crossings are unsafe and slow trail crossings are safe. It's just one of the factors that goes into how we think about safety when it comes to trail crossing. So I just want to make that distinction to start. Additionally, some traffic engineering terms that I want to share with everyone so we're all on the same page. I'm sure that folks understand average pretty well. 85th percentile speed is something that's probably new to most folks in the room. It is kind of the gold standard on what the criteria we use when we think about speeds, especially when we think about setting a speed limit for a roadway. We use the 85th percentile speed. What that means is that 85% of drivers are traveling at or below that 85th percentile speed. You can imagine that there's always going to be outliers of folks that travel too fast on our roadways. We can't design for the fastest driver, but 85th percentile is what we use in the industry. And then lastly, the 10 mile per hour pace speed on the far right column, that is simply the range at which the majority of drivers are traveling. So with that, I'll get into the individual crossings, starting with the Greyhound Pass and Monon crossing. 25 mile per hour posted speed limit. And one thing to point out is you'll see as a common theme tonight, typically when we look at 85th percentile speed, if it's within 0 to 5 miles per hour of the posted speed, that's considered pretty normal. Even as much as perhaps 7 miles per hour over the posted is a pretty normal rate that you see when you do speed studies on roadways. So looking at Greyhound Pass, average speed right at the posted, essentially 85th percentile, about 6 to 7 miles per hour over. I would say that here at this crossing, very good sight distance, good visibility, low issues as far as pedestrian safety. And I will say that Greyhound Pass, that 25 mile per hour posted speed limit is probably lower than it could be. We've certainly tried to reduce that speed as much as we can for Village Farms and the folks that live nearby. I don't have any major concerns with this crossing. But the data is there at a little bit over the posted speed limit. 156 in the Monon on the right side here. Again, within that kind of 5 mile per hour range of the 85th percentile versus posted speed limit. Average is well below the posted speed. Again, good sight distance, and that's a theme you'll see tonight as well, is that the posted speed is one factor in how fast people drive, but actually the more important factor, the thing that shows itself in studies, is that it's the environment that the drivers are driving in that actually determine a lot of how fast you drive. You can imagine a 40 mile per hour posted speed limit in a twisty-turny countryside of England on a narrow roadway and a 40 mile per hour straight road here in the US. Drivers are going to drive differently on those two roads, despite the fact that it's a 40 mile per hour posted speed limit either way. So moving on, 161st and the Monon. Certainly this is a crossing we've talked about at length. I think it's kind of interesting based on our study, posted speed limit of 35 miles per hour. You actually see an 85th percentile at or a little bit below the posted speed limit here. I think what's happening is our community, our residents, understand that there's some safety concerns here. Sight distance isn't great with the vertical curve, and there are some trees in the area. So that kind of bears itself out in the data with folks naturally slowing down at this crossing already relative to the posted speed limit. Again, it kind of goes back to what I said. A slow crossing doesn't necessarily mean it's a safe crossing, and vice versa. So moving on, 169th and the Monon. This one is one that we probably should take a little closer look at. You can see the 85th percentile is 42 miles an hour versus a posted speed limit of 35. Again, really good sight distance here. So, driving 40 miles per hour or, 35 miles per hour, because I see Chief Rush is here. I don't want to say drive over the speed limit, of course, but driving 35 to say 40 miles per hour at this crossing when you know that there are no pedestrians present, that's an acceptable behavior, and it's likely what you're seeing in the data is that there's great sight distance at this crossing, maybe not a lot of pedestrians, and folks are driving at that speed limit, so it kind of bears itself out in the data. Westfield Park, and I'll speed up a little bit just in the interest of time. Westfield Park Road, 30 mile per hour posted, again, kind of 5 to 6 miles per hour over the posted for 85th percentile. Good sight distance. We do have a project coming up at this location. We're doing a culvert replacement, as well as there'll be some new pedestrian crossing signage and striping here. So there will be some improvements already made to this crossing. 175th and Monon, well below the posted speed limit. That's a function of coming to a stop or making a turn off of Wheeler Road. No concerns with regards to speed at this crossing. And then 191st and the Monon is kind of the more interesting one in the study. You'll see a pretty large split between eastbound and westbound speeds. And what's happening here, I believe, is really two things. First, eastbound direction, again, it's great sight distance. You can see the crossing very well. In the westbound direction, there's a lot of trees on the north side here that actually obstruct some of your sight distance and your ability to see pedestrians on the north side of that trail. So what you're seeing, again, is drivers recognizing that and naturally slowing down, as opposed to the eastbound direction. The other factor that's probably happening here is that Grand Park traffic coming to Grand Park, you do get some congestion when the park is busy, and so you're going to see some lower speeds as well in the westbound direction. 199th and Monon, a very low traveled road. The 85th percentile is just slightly over in one direction posted, but again, no concerns here. We're talking about 75 vehicles per day, very low traveled road. And then moving on to the Midland, we've got Oak Ridge in the Midland, similarly within that kind of 5 mile per hour range. Same with Spring Mill, great sight distance at both of these crossings. Cherry Street in the Midlands, actually our lowest posted speed limit crossing there with a 20 mile per hour speed limit. You do see 85th percentile speeds above that 5 mile per hour range we talk about in the 28 to 29 mile per hour range. That's to be expected. It's hard to get folks to drive 20 miles per hour a lot of times, unfortunately. Again, we have pretty good sight distance. It's kind of coming down a hill at that location. Low history of pedestrian concerns at this crossing. Cary Road in the Midland, same thing, right at kind of posted speed limits. We do have a project in the works to do a pedestrian refuge at this crossing. It's a pretty wide crossing for the pedestrians across Cary Road, and we are putting in a pedestrian refuge in the middle there to give them some additional protection at that crossing. And then the last two, Gunther Boulevard in the Midland, same thing, posted 25 within that 5 mile per hour range, and Gray Road, same thing, 40 mile per hour posted within that 5 mile per hour range for 85th percentile. So what does this all mean? Like I said, I think there are a couple of these we may take a closer look at, but the key takeaways from the study is that the speeds that we're seeing from our drivers are within the expected range that you would see given the posted speed limit and the environment around these crossings. Enforcement has shown to be the most effective way to reduce speeds. You can put up a lower speed limit, and studies show that for every 10 miles per hour of reduced speed by the speed limit, you get about 1 mile per hour of reduction from driver behavior. So that's to say that it's, again, the environment and the enforcement that goes into these to keep speeds down rather than just the simply posted speed limit. We do have a mobile radar unit that could be posted at some of these to make sure we're reminding drivers to stay at or below the speed limit as they approach. And then again, sight distance plays a huge factor in determining driver behavior as they approach pedestrian crossings. If they're unsure if a pedestrian's there, people naturally slow down. If they can confirm with their eyes there is no pedestrian and there's no pedestrian for a wide swath left and right of them, they will continue traveling at the speed that they were traveling at before, which is at the speed limit or maybe a little bit over. And then lastly, with regards to, if you're interested in reading more about pedestrian safety at uncontrolled crossing locations, uncontrolled just means no stoplight, no stop sign. There is guidance produced by the Federal Highway Administration. It was updated in July of 2018, called the Guide for Improving Pedestrian Safety at Uncontrolled Crossing Locations. It is the sweet spot for what we're talking about tonight, and I'd be happy to distribute that to the council if they wish to do a little bit more reading. It's a pretty light read. It's not too short, heavy on the infographics, that type of thing. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Jonathan, I have a quick question, just to clarify. You said for every 10 mile an hour, it's a 1 mile an hour drop in average speed?
Yeah, and I'm referencing a study that I learned about a couple of years ago at Purdue Road School, but it's always stuck out to me, and I can track down that data
That's
if need
okay.
be. But yeah, so essentially, it's not the posted speed limit that determines most of the driver's speed
Yeah.
behavior.
I mean, I like numbers and statistics, and if I remember what you just put up here, actually, a 10 mile an hour drop in the speed limit from the different change to change from road to road actually resulted in more than a 1 mile an hour difference, correct?
Well,
For
sure.
our case?
Yeah, but there's also different environmental conditions at each of these crossings as well.
Yeah,
The study I was referencing is you take two equal roadways that are the exact same, you put 40 miles per hour at one, and you put 30 miles per hour at the other. If the 85th percentile is 40 miles per hour at the 40 mile per hour posted, it's 39 at the 30 posted. That's what that study's getting at.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of, standard.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not quite fair to say just across the board that,
Yeah.
each one is different.
My biggest takeaway, because I know I've called multiple times because citizens have called me about cutting back the brush for visibility and, poor visibility equals not safe, but in fact, we drive the slowest at the poorest visibility. So what does that mean?
Yeah, so it's a little bit counterintuitive, and I want to make sure I'm clear on this. We should not have bad visibility just to keep speeds down. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we should do everything to improve sight distance at these crossings to improve safety. What may happen is that speeds increase a little bit because drivers can see there aren't pedestrians coming, but that doesn't mean that the crossing is less safe. In fact, it's more safe with better sight distance.
So we need good sight distance and increased enforcement if we want speeds down.
Those would be my two recommendations, correct. And one thing to note, again, I talked about the Guide for Improving Pedestrian Safety. They do not discuss special reduced speed zones for these crossings. I'm not aware of that type of a treatment used. There may be communities out there that do it, but it isn't one of the mitigation options that Federal Highway recommends in this document. So I just want to be clear about that.
So Jonathan, be perfectly clear, what is the city's recommendations with respect to?
So generally speaking, I think we need to, it's not just speed that is the determining factor for if these crossings are safe or not. I think that we need to monitor very closely any close calls, certainly any accident history at these crossings. We have one crossing in the community, 161st in the Monon, that has accident history, unfortunately, and has lots of close calls. We need to monitor the close calls so that we can be proactive about making improvements as needed. And we need to do everything we can to improve sight distance where it's possible. But a lot of the treatments that are recommended in the federal highway guidance, we're already doing with pavement markings, signage, flashing lights, those types of things. So my recommendation is to not make any drastic changes, not to create reduced speed zones just for these trails, but instead continue to monitor those for safety, improve sight distance where we can, and step up enforcement selectively in some of the crossings that had higher speeds to try and get that down a little closer.
Okay, will you be coming back to us with specific intersections that you are recommending that we improve the sight distance?
I certainly can, and obviously if we were able to improve the sight distance At a lot of these, we already would have. Some of it's a right-of-way issue. 191st and Monon, I know, Jeremy, we've looked at that in the past, but we can certainly continue to try to make improvements there as 191st Street increases in traffic.
And that, I mean, that intersection is certainly my biggest concern up there,
I fully agree.
with the out-of-town traffic and the low visibility.
Yep, I agree.
Have you done any work on, as far as developing training materials for the general public with respect to what to do at
So-
intersections?
I know we've done some campaigns in the past prior to my time with the city. One thing I would note, I do think consistency is very important at these crossings so that pedestrians understand what the expectations are for them and drivers similarly understand the expectations for driving their vehicles at these crossings. We can certainly revisit that. I'm happy to put together some more infographics and work with Vicky and her communications team.
And to add to that, I believe Vicky is working with the PD to do exactly what you're saying. I don't know where that stands, but I'm sure Vicky can make you all aware of where that is, just to put out some informational videos, not dissimilar to the ones that we've done several times in the past, but certainly time to do it again.
If I could just jump in real quick, Mike. So one thing I talked to Jeremy about, by the way, thanks, Jonathan, for putting this together. I mean, we asked this, and this addresses one side of it. And since the chief is here also, Jeremy, you and I talked about this. It addresses one side. I had a citizen of Westfield come to me and say, you can put in every tunnel you want, but if you don't stop the bicyclists from pushing us off the road, it's not going to help. So, and this person with the last name Miller came to me and said, you know, every time I walk and I cross 161st in Monon, it's not a big deal. The problem is when the bike's going past me at 30 mile an hour, or 2 or 3 bikes are going past me at 30 mile an hour, how can we stop that? So maybe part of the communications that we do, if we're going to do it, is to get to with whoever the bicycle groups, or I'm not sure who that is, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if there's like set bicyclists that are using it, but, and Jeremy, you and I talked about this, and I told you that, and sometimes they're in groups of 4 and 5, you know, and they're wearing all their Tour de Monde uniforms, and that's great, but, you know, when they're all going 30 mile an hour, the 70-year-old gal who just wants to take a leisurely walk doesn't feel that great, and she said, now I gotta, if I have to go into a tunnel, these guys are gonna whip past me and probably scare the bejesus out of her, you know?
Yeah, and,
So-
and understandable, and as we talk, there's a speed limit on the trails. It's 20 miles per hour. Actually, Scott Jordan, Police Department, Assistant Chief, he and Chris McConnell are currently working on revising that, with myself included, revising the language of all of our parks, but that language is specific in the ordinance revision that will come to you all later this year, hopefully next month. But that is an enforcement issue. I do not have ticketing authority, so we will work with the police department to see how they want to address that. But it is a concern.
Okay.
Not to play devil's advocate, but I don't know of anybody that's died by getting hit by a bike. It's usually the vehicles that cause the big problems.
Yeah.
But the behavior of the bicyclist, you know, we look at, for example, the intersection we've been working on for forever.
Mhm.
And to see the data, the cars are actually way slower than the speed limit, how interesting that is. But even when we put the Hawk system there, the problem is the bicyclist that does not want to stop and hit the button is still gonna jut out in front of a car.
Agreed,
And,
yes.
so just if there's new technology or any behavior shaping for the people on the bikes, we're all learning, you know, we'd love to have anything that you find as you study this. Thank you for all the time you put on this. We really appreciate it. Like you said, it addresses one side of it. It's probably a multifaceted solution because it's not just the cars.
It certainly is, and our issues aren't unique to Westfield. They exist wherever you
Right.
have a significant trail network. And we will continue to do as we have been. I agree with you, Jake, completely. Sorry, Counselor Gilbert. if they won't stop at a flashing stop sign that clearly you can see from a quarter of a mile away, so you have plenty of time to brake on your bicycle, I have a hard time believing they're gonna stop, push a button, wait 30 seconds, cross the road, and then get back on their bike.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a human behavior issue,
Agreed.
and the Hawk system just adds a different element to the human behavior, but it doesn't eliminate it. Only the tunnel does that. And when you look at the data, I mean, it's almost 3 to 4 times more crossings or more traffic at 161st and Monon than any other intersection we have. So statistically speaking, you're more likely to have accidents just for that alone. Add to it, it's got the worst visibility, it's got the worst elevation change as you're approaching it. It's on the main thoroughfare getting to US 31, so we know people are either anxious to get to work or anxious to get home. It's a perfect storm for what we're seeing, which is 2 accidents in the last month alone. So, yeah, it is what it is. Besides 161st and 191st Street, those are the 2 I think we've all heard routinely about. Are there any other intersections that you guys foresee as needing addressing in the near future, or?
I think related to speed specifically, the 156th in the Monon and the 169th in the Monon were 2 that kind of stood out to me as being a little faster than I would have expected. Again, I do think it's partially because there are no stop signs near those crossings. You've got a long straightaway as well as good sight distance. But I think that's something we'll work with Chief Rush and look at some enforcement options. And maybe there's some other low-cost options we could consider at those as well.
Thank you, appreciate it.
The only thing I would add to that is, as we continue to develop the Midland Trail and have some plans for connectivity, essentially from Quaker Park over to Spring Mill Road, I think the usage of the Midland at Spring Mill and the Midland by Meyer is going to continue to climb significantly. And then also we need to keep an eye on Oak Ridge Road in the Midland as well. We have some improvements at Cary that I think will make that much, much safer. Most likely we'll need to do some additional improvements at those, very similar with a pedestrian refuge. I don't know that they need to be grade separations at this point in time, but we'll have to see that as traffic develops and usage develops. So.
Councilors? I would just like to add just a couple of observations here, and I'm glad the chief is here tonight and hearing this, and hopefully we'll be participating in the future. Probably, I think from a council standpoint, our level of frustration is probably higher on this issue than other issues. We first introduced this program when we looked at the Hawk system and asked that that be ordered back in January or in December of last year. So we've been waiting 7.5 months for that to happen. And I certainly understand supply chain, what's happened to supply chain and COVID, and pushing that back. So, and I know you're doing the best you can with that. We are a little disappointed that it took so long to have a traffic study, because I think it's been 4.5 months since we talked about a traffic study, and we were hoping to get some information on that. I would appreciate what you provided us tonight, and looking toward the future on that. But it's almost like when we look at this issue, it's almost like it's a 3-headed beast, if you will. There's the Hawk system out there. There is the traffic study with now what will come with the site clearing, if you will, and the attention to that detail. And then the third issue was something that we talked about back in May 24th, I think. And I think it was Councilman Gilbert that had raised the issue about continuing education, the educational standpoint for our pedestrians, our drivers, our bicyclists, and the need to do something there. And at that same meeting, Councilman Willis talked about the issue for education regarding the Hawk system. Well, I think the Hawk system, if we get that educational package put together, that probably doesn't have to be introduced until the Hawk system is up and running. But I think there's probably a greater need for, and we've talked about it already, alluded to it tonight, the training and informational system going out to the general public with respect to what's expected to happen at the crossings. And that educational informational system, I think we've got a pretty dynamic communications department, and we should be able to put together something multimedia, including social media, to get that out to our folks. So my opinion is that public safety is one of the greatest things and greatest responsibilities that we in local city government have. And again, I think my frustration is that I think I'd like to see us do more quicker. I'm going to ask that you guys come back to us in a month from now, maybe on August 9th, with an update as to what you've done with respect to the site issues, with a quick update on where we're at with the Hawk system, which would we're probably close. But more importantly then, with also an update as to what we're doing from an educational standpoint.
We can certainly do that. The only thing that I'll comment on is if there is an existing site distance issue, it is because we don't have rights to the property or the trees that are in the way. So in a month from now, that is not going to change. Land acquisition takes many months, sometimes up to a year. If it is the desire of this council for us to go and acquire property to be able to clear these areas, we can certainly start that process, and we can give you an update on that if that's the direction you want to go.
Well, I would like to see an update as to what you can do with that 191st Street, because that really,
Our option is to buy the land on the northeast corner. Okay?
okay,
We'll start the process and working on
I
that.
appreciate it.
I'll just add, with regards to education, Noblesville was kind enough to share what educational packages they put together when they introduced the Hawk system there at Hazeldale, east of the city of Westfield. And so we have a pretty good template as far as education with regards to the Hawk system specifically. We'll certainly get that out before the Hawk system goes into place, several weeks in advance, so that drivers are not surprised by that. But yeah, we'll be working with Vicky's team to get some of that educational information out there.
Thanks, Jonathan, appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is an update from William Knox on Grant Park, and I think William's participating via the ozone here, the atmosphere.
Yes, Council President, I am joining via phone. As I mentioned earlier today, I'm not fully prepared to give an update, but I can absolutely answer any questions if there are any today, and can provide a report at a future meeting.
Councilors? Well, William, unfortunately, I'm sorry you weren't at the pre-council meeting. I was hoping that you'd be able to provide the general update very similar to what you provided to the RDC 2 or 3 weeks ago with financial update this year versus last and whatnot. Will you be able to do that at our next meeting?
Yes, I should be able to provide that. I was unable to join the council meeting because I was out for a bereavement leave, so I could not join in on that. But I would be more than happy to provide that update. Just giving me appropriate notice would be great.
Okay, thank you, William. We'll look forward to that then at our next meeting.
If I can, I'm just gonna make one, sorry, Jeremy, hey, just real quick, on the property, have we asked the owners that are on the bike trail if we can cut back their trees and shrubs? I mean, that way we wouldn't have to acquire anything, we just ask them permission to?
At every location that exists, with exception of that north, as far as I know, with exception of that northeast corner at 191, the property owner is not local, and getting a hold of them has been very difficult.
Okay.
That'll be the first avenue we take. If we can't, then we have to define the right-of-way needs and start the process of acquisition.
Okay, I appreciate it, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Thanks. All right. Our next presentation tonight is an update on the Heart and Soul Clinic from Lisa Craig. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is Lisa Craig, and I'm the Executive Director at Heart and Soul Free Clinic. Our clinic is located here in Westfield, and we provide free medical, dental, and mental health care to individuals who are uninsured and underinsured. And many of you guys may be aware of our clinic because in 2009, it started in, I believe it was that little building right over there. Is that correct? And that was before my time. I started as the executive director in 2019. And so the past 3.5 years, we've been located just south of the Hampton Inn on Westfield Park Road. Many people may wonder why we have free clinic here in Westfield, but interestingly, we have 3 free clinics in Hamilton County, all providing care to individuals that are uninsured. Ours here in Westfield has grown tremendously in the last 6 years. In 2015, we had a total of 170 patient visits. In 2020, we had almost 1,200 patient visits, and we are projected to see 1,400 patients in 2021, based on our current numbers. We have many people within our county that are uninsured and unable to afford their medical care. And I wanted to just kind of point out, why is this important? Well, this is important because many of those individuals are working, 85% of our patients are working in some capacity. But that means they're working jobs that are low income, low paying jobs. So it's hard to pay their rent, it's hard to pay utilities and all the other bills, let alone paying for medical care. If somebody ends up needing medical care, it costs, if you're uninsured, at least $150 to go see a doctor and have all the labs done. And then lo and behold, you might turn up that you're diabetic, and that cost, let alone, is going to make people make decisions on if they can pay their utility bills, their food, or their medical bills, or even take their life-saving insulin. And that's why we're here. We're here to help take care of the healthcare needs of our community who can't afford to do that. I'm just here to update everybody on what is going on at our clinic and how much we have worked to take care of the community. So 90% of our patient population is from Hamilton County, although we are able to see patients outside of Hamilton County as well. And the majority of those, the biggest percentage is from Westfield, and I presume that's because of proximity. Like I said, about 85% of our patient population have some employment, either part-time or full-time. And interestingly, about 53% of our patient population is Spanish-speaking. And those are numbers from 2020, but I feel like those numbers have grown in 2021, but I don't have the statistics to tell you for sure. But I know when I'm there and when I'm answering the phones, I don't speak Spanish, so I can't communicate. But the services that we have, that we provide have grown a lot since the very beginning. When we started in 2009, we were only providing medical care, but we have grown to include dental care and mental health. So our medical care that we provide is typical urgent care needs if somebody needs, has an ear infection and needs to be seen. But then we also, probably the most important thing that we provide is ongoing chronic care to those individuals that have chronic health care needs, such as diabetes and high blood pressure. We see a lot of patients like that. We have a women's clinic that we started in August of 2020 where we see women's health needs every other month. And in 2018, we acquired a mobile, it's an RV, quite honestly, that's been outfitted as a medical unit. And we take that to various locations for scheduled visits in Hamilton County. So currently we take it to Carmel United Methodist Church, When Gleaner's Food Bank is there, we take it to Grace Care Center. Actually, we've been on a hiatus from that due to COVID, but we're beginning to go back in September. And we take it to Delaware Township Trustee Parking Lot, which is in Fishers, to address that population and the transportation issues to be able to get all the way over here to Westfield. Our dental care, we mostly, what we do is provide extractions and fillings for individuals that have pain. But we've also started providing one root canal a month to individuals that may be at risk of losing one or more of their front teeth. We feel that's very important to help individuals with keeping those teeth for employability and self-esteem purposes. And then in May of 2020, we started providing mental health care to individuals. And that's something that's been in the media a lot because of, or mental health care has been in the media a lot because of COVID and because of the pandemic and how that's affected people's mental health. However, this was something that we were planning on doing prior to that. This was all in the works, and it just happened to come together during the pandemic. So all our volunteers all our healthcare providers are volunteers. We have approximately 120 volunteers. Probably about 20 are regulars. We for everything that we do. We operate on a very low budget, and that's because of all our volunteers. We operate and see this many patients and patient visits on a budget of $240,000 for the year, and that includes our salaries and everything we do, including paying for labs, and also sometimes we pay for people's prescriptions if they can't afford. We don't charge anybody for what we do, but we get the funding for this through donors, fundraisers, and grants. So I just wanted you guys to be aware. I wanted to invite you guys to come and tour our clinic. And all of you guys, anybody who is interested is welcome to contact the clinic and ask for a tour. I would love to show you. You guys have my card. You can reach out to me and I will give you a tour. I also want you guys to be aware that we are growing, and eventually we will be looking for more space. I don't know when, but we are growing. As you can see, we've grown immensely in the last 6 years, and I don't think that's going away. And then if you guys, anybody, that's listening, you guys up here know people that are interested in volunteering, healthcare providers, non-healthcare providers. That's something that we're always looking for. Mental health providers, Spanish speakers to provide in translation services. Those are all very important to us. But like I said, I just wanted you guys to be aware of what we're doing here in our community to help take care of the healthcare needs. Do you guys have any questions?
I think I have one. Do you do anything with the high school in their program? They had different certification programs in the health field, I think in the Project Lead the Way, if I'm not mistaken. I know they had a medical terminology class for Spanish.
Yes, the first year, so that was in 2019, the fall of 2019 was the first year they had that course. And we, myself and one of our interpreters went to go and talk to that class. Actually, the teacher, Stacy O'Brien, is one of our volunteers. She's so busy with other things that she doesn't come very often, but she is a volunteer. You have to be 18 to provide any kind of patient care services. And interestingly, I did ask, that was my whole goal of going to the class, is to try to seek out volunteers. And I think that year there were only 2 people that were 18. And so that kind of didn't work out. But One of those individuals is now a volunteer now that she's a college student, so. But that's really all that we've been able to do. As far as getting individuals like CNAs, I think that's another course that's at the high school or that they're able to do. We don't have because everybody's volunteers, we don't have the staff to help train those individuals and give them what they need. So whatever they're continuing to do is what they should continue to do, so. You guys have any other questions?
Counselors, I would encourage you to visit the clinic. I had an opportunity to do that last year during the pandemic. It's a pretty neat place. I was amazed at the space you had for the dental section, which was like about, I think, 35–40% of the building was involved with dental work, which is fantastic. And I know you've got a good plan for that. And also your RV, that was pretty interesting there. So yeah, I encourage everyone to take a look at it. And it's a fantastic program.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda for tonight is old business. Resolution 21-113, approving certain real property improvements within the city of Westfield for tax abatements, which is the North Point ERA shell buildings. It had a council introduction on May 24th of this year, and it's up for adoption and consideration this evening. I think Chuck is going to introduce the petitioner.
Yes, good evening, councilors. For the record, Kai Chuck, Economic Development Director. I'm here to present the adoption consideration for the North Point Shell Buildings for a 10-year real property tax abatement. As a brief refresher, the 3 buildings are to be constructed at the North Point Business Park. Building number 1 is 182,500 square feet. Building number 2 is 96,000 square feet, and building number 3 is 55,000 square feet. The estimated value of all 3 would be about $25.5 million. The real property abatement is 100% at year 1 and reduced at 10% increments by the year 10 at 10%. The resolution has been through 3 additions and changes since it was originally presented to the City Council in May. The petitioner's representative, Chris Wilkes from Holiday Properties, is here to present those changes in detail to the council, and both he and myself are available for questions throughout the presentation. Chris.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the council. For the record, my name is Chris Wilkes with Holiday Properties. And some of this that I'll go through tonight was presented at the initial introduction on May 24th and presented again at the Finance Committee on July 1. So so some of you have already seen this, so I'll try to be brief. I'll do this. Yes, could you drive? Thank you. The next page there, Kevin, thank you. As Kai mentioned, we have 3 buildings that we're discussing. The building number 1 is the 182,000 square feet. Building number 2 is the 96,000, and then building number 3 is the 55,000 square feet. As I mentioned on May 24th and on the July 1 Finance Committee, you know, what we've been finding at North Point, we really have tenants that fall into 2 general categories. Tenants that have the benefit of time to locate a real estate, a location either in Westfield or other places. The Bastion Toyota comes to mind, either Gordon Food Service, Abbott Labs. And certainly we've had our share of wins with those type of tenants, but what we really have been missing in the last 12 to 18 months is just countless opportunities of smaller businesses that just didn't have the benefit of time. And so what we've been thinking about for a while, and the one way we want to target that type of audience is to put these buildings in the air, have them ready for occupancy to accommodate those shorter timelines. So as Kai mentioned, our company is willing to invest over the 3 buildings, not just 1, but 3, nearly $25 million, and prepared to do that, try to get 2 of those under construction yet this year. North Point 2, the middle one may slip to next year, but that is the intent. The second, if you could move on. Again, this was presented at May 24th and on July 1, but just it's worth repeating. Again, the 3 buildings, total of 333,000 square feet, combined investment of $25 million, projected AV of 18. The 3 parcels right now pay a combined total of $4,700 in real estate taxes. And the first year of the abatement, even at the 90% level, would increase that by over 10 times. And over the course of the abatement would generate about $2.6 million in taxes, even under the abatement over the next 11 years. Next please, or page please. As Kai mentioned, we have had numerous changes, well, numerous isn't the right word, but a number of key changes to the resolution as we've moved through the process, all of which I think are really good additions. But as mentioned, we made a presentation on May 24th. Councilor Spojeric pointed out, we had one portion of a park, the Building 3, that actually has a dual zoning that allows both LB and GB, and so, which was a good point. And so we've amended in the ordinance for the resolution prohibiting the abatement will not benefit any tenant that falls into the LB category for that particular building. So I think that's a good addition. Another really good addition, I think both for the public sector and the private sector, and this is in working with Councilor Patton and Councilor Gilbert, both of whom really thought the net new element of the resolution, that is providing abatement only on net new investment here in Westfield. So for instance, if you had a tenant that was already in Westfield at 30,000 square feet and they simply moved up to our project for the same 30,000, they would not receive any abatement benefit at all. And I think that's a really good element, again, as I mentioned, from both the private sector and the public sector. So the way the ordinance would be is worded is that the net new, in this case, for an example, if a tenant was expanding from 30 to 60,000, the benefit would be on the net additional 30,000. So again, I think that's a real positive element. And then lastly, we introduced some job parameters for the 3 buildings that we established those based on abatements and incentives that were offered to previous tenants up in North Point, Toyota, Abbott, and Brown & Chapman. So we use those job parameters that we included in this amendment. We took those as a guide. And so that we can, we'll have to report against those every year to the council for compliance. And if we hit those job parameters, wonderful. If we don't, we'll have an opportunity to come back and have a chat. So that's what we'll do. So, and as I mentioned, we were fortunate to be able to invited to present to the Finance Committee on July 1, which I appreciated. I think we got really good dialogue and feedback at that presentation. And again, really has made the ordinance or the resolution better throughout the process, and I really appreciate that. I appreciate the support and the collaboration, and again, I really think we've made this better. So with that, I appreciate in advance your consideration, and I'll conclude my presentation and open up for any questions or comments.
I just want to thank you, Chris, for doing this. I mean, really, I do think Holiday Properties is, it's good corporate citizenship. It really is.
Thank you.
And as somebody who lives in Westfield, it's good for everybody.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate you listening to all of us up here, so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
well, no, thank you too. So appreciate that.
I'll go.
Thank you for addressing the concerns that I had. I do have some questions about how this resolution is written, though. And
Okay.
it's more about how that would be administered. So this benefit, the abatement goes to the developer. And I'm having trouble discerning then with the lease agreement how a lessor wouldn't benefit from the abatement that you're getting. Do you see what I mean? Because it's not something that we would track, and it's just
Right.
not set up like that.
Right. I think that would be addressed in the compliance reporting, so that we would report, as I understand it, under the statute, we have to file a form, is it CF1? So in the CF1, we have to address compliance with the entire resolution as worded. So in that case, since this element of the LB was so specific, we would have to comment. So for instance, if we had a tenant that was, fell into the LB, we would have to report that. And so I think it would be governed in that compliance, annual compliance reporting.
There's also the language about they have to commit to being there for 5 years before it can avail itself of the benefit.
That's in the net new provision.
Right.
Right.
But that language, I'm also having trouble discerning how that would be implemented.
Yeah. Well, I think in that case, we would have to report compliance. So for instance, if we were to lease, in the example of what I mentioned earlier, if we had a tenant that was in 30,000 square feet already in Westfield, and they wanted to come up and lease 60,000, but for 1 year, that would be in direct conflict with the text of this. So, we like
So, yeah.
long-term commitments.
So the lease would generally be past 60 months anyways, really.
Yes, I mean,
Right.
it's possible that you can do a lease less than that, but that is not from a Holiday Properties perspective, longer-term leases are always desired.
Yeah.
And again, I also thought when we were working with this net new,
Yeah.
I thought it was, you want to reward, which is the goal of this, we want to reward long-term investment in Westfield, not
Right.
someone just to sweep in here for a year, 2 or 3 years. So 5 years seemed like a good timeline to include in the ordinance.
And when you look at not to interrupt, but when you look at the type of businesses you're bringing in, the cost to move that equipment in and out wouldn't justify a 1, 2, 3 year lease. I mean, there's just no way.
No.
No way they would do that.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't expect short-term, but in the event, just in the event that someone is just, for instance, they might want to sign a 5-year lease, but they might want to have a 3-year ability to terminate. Well, okay, then that doesn't satisfy the ordinance, so, but
Chris,
again.
have you done any research on what typical length of lease times are for these types of companies like manufacturing and light industrial?
Oh, in our experience, in our portfolio, they're always in excess of 5 years, usually nowadays, especially for the type of tenants that we'd be targeting here, a lot of capital investment on the property side and employment side. So those are not made, like you said, the cost of moving a facility like that is pretty prohibitive, so.
So Chris, it's your intent then to build these developments, these buildings, and then hold them yourself, not sell them?
Yes, right, yeah. Now, selling is always an option, but our, we tend to like to hold the buildings in our portfolio.
So if you were to sell one of these 3 buildings, then the abatement for that particular building would go away, I would assume. Is that?
No, I think the abatement would run with the legal description, which would be that building, but that new owner would be subject to the same compliance reporting. So if, you know, LB tenant had to show up, or a tenant that didn't have the 5-year, you know, they would be, you know, subject to the same.
And if you're in a position where if your tenants aren't producing, then you're not getting the abatement. So it kind of puts you in that extra, you know, that extra relationship with
Yes.
with your tenant. So,
Right. No, it'll be abundantly clear of the expectations of this council in granting the abatement. So they can't, no one could accuse us of not being very clear of the employment and the capital investment and the timeline and the type of tenant, you know, that we're expecting here, so.
Chris, I would guess this is not your first rodeo
Yeah.
on doing stuff like this. You've done plenty of it down in the Mariplex, and that seems to have worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
And you've kind of put your neck on the line to guarantee salaries and you know, number of jobs. So that, I think that's the striking difference in this. And some communities, I've already talked to you about this, like Jasper just don't do it at all.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of communities that do it in different forms. They have point systems and all sorts of things. But this brings it a lot towards what we need, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And as I mentioned to you, you know, this is a dual prong strategy for us, because we still have over 120 acres of land within the North Point where we can reserve for those tenants like the Toyotas and the Abbotts and the Gordons. So this just allows us to target a segment of the market, which I would dare say is a larger share of the market than those big fish, so to speak, that we just are time and again missing. So.
I just have one more comment. You know, it gives me concern to be doing an abatement on a spec building, especially this one in a TIF district. I would like to say, though, something that did play into this for me was the fact that this will still be paying the referendum for the schools. And so that is a good thing for our current taxpayers, because in essence, it lowers everyone's rate.
Right.
So that was factoring into my decision with this one, too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments, councilors? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve resolution 21-113?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Scott Willis, seconded by Troy Patton. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes?
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Cindy Spalgeri,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
All right. Members of the council, thank you very much. We really appreciate the support and the confidence. Thanks again.
Thank you.
The next ordinance on the agenda tonight is ordinance 21-32, which is repealing and replacing the city's animal control ordinance. I had a council introduction on June 14th. It's up for adoption consideration this evening, and I believe that Chief Joel Rush is going to discuss that. Chief?
Okay, this ordinance replaces Chapter 10, it's basically the same one it is now. It's the original was 1990, so it's over 30 years old. It's going from about 3 pages to, I think it's, just read it again today, but it's about 30 pages, something like that. A lot of which are just definitions. It makes it a little more clear for the reader and a little bit easier to interpret. It actually, I want to thank Scott Jordan for his work on it, along with legal. We were the last of the show, so to speak. Everyone else in the county has already completed this ordinance. It parallels those along with what the county's doing already, which makes it good for us. It brings a outdated ordinance and really an unenforceable ordinance to make it more enforceable for our officers. Again, it provides clarity with the definitions, makes it less confusing for the residents. It strengthens the penalties, and it establishes fees that are outdated. And most importantly, it provides more protections and regulations for the animals. I'm here to answer any questions if you have any, but it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Councilman? Questions? Okay, can I then have a motion to approve ordinance 21-32, repealing and replacing the city's animal control ordinance?
I'd like to make a motion to approve ordinance 21-32.
You have a second?
I'll second.
Motion made by Troy Patton, seconded by Scott Willis. Cindy, please call the roll.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Mike Johns,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
Yes.
Cindy Spallieri,
Yes.
Troy Patton.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Just for clarity, Mr. Johns, if I may, this doesn't take effect immediately since it has penalties. It has to be published once within the next 30 days. And after that publication runs, it'll be effective. Just want everybody to kind of
So we're
get a sense
looking
for that.
about a 30-day timeframe?
Yeah, optimistically, probably by mid-August, it'll be fully effective after it's
All right.
published.
Okay, thank you. Chief, will there be any public notice that goes out on this as far as education or from, okay. Yeah, I think that would be helpful to get that out, social media and whatnot, let everyone knows coming. Okay, new business this evening. We've got three pieces of new business in council introductions this evening. Ordinance 21-33 Grand Millennium Center PUD up for council introduction tonight. And I think Pam Howard is going to introduce this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. Before you this evening for an introduction, we have an amendment to the existing Grand Millennium Center PUD, which was zoned back in early 2017. This site is located generally at the northeast corner of US 31 and David Brown Drive and is zoned a mixed-use PUD district with both commercial and multifamily uses permitted. And the proposed amendment would amend those multifamily regulations as well as expand the area where multifamily is permitted on the site. I do have David George here with CRG Residential here to make a presentation, after which both he and I are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council President Johns, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Appreciate your time tonight. I just had a couple slides. I know it's just an introduction. So I just wanted to introduce myself. David George with CRG Residential. CRG is a Hamilton County company. We work on solely multi-use and residential projects. We've got a 30-year track record. And what I thought I'd do is just share a couple different slides of some projects that we've done. The Westfield Millennium PUD is a very large PUD, of which multiple projects will happen over the years. It's essentially from 31 over, and then from Dave Brown all the way up to what you call Park Street. So it's just a little bit south of 32. And within that, there are several different uses, and I'll get to that here in a second. But just real quick, just had a couple different slides just to share a little bit about CRG. And some of these are in different communities. I do not point these out to be one size fits all. This is just what worked in those particular communities, just to kind of share some of the breadth of some of the things that we've done. This is Newport, Kentucky, which is on the south side of Cincinnati. It's on the other side of the river. If you've ever been to Newport, they're very well known for the aquarium. Whenever I say Newport, people know that the Cincinnati Aquarium is basically across the street. We worked with not only the city, but the city, the county, and the school system. This was actually a former school site. Worked on this for about 5 or 6 years, and at the top photo, it was after COVID, but we still had masks. We did have a ribbon cutting. So it's a multi-use project that had a parking facility, it had retail, and then residential, and it's fully up and operating now. The next slide is one that we're doing in downtown Fishers. The west side of the property is what is going to become the trail. I know that you had some discussion tonight on your Monon, which is a great asset in the Westfield community. This will become a nice asset in the Fishers community. This again is a multi-use project. It has retail on the first floor, and then residential. It has some parking. And then on the other side of the street, it has some office use. So you'll have some job base as well. And the third one real quick is, this is in Greenwood. So on the upper slide, along the top, kind of going diagonal, so north is to the right. So from the roundabout up diagonally, that's Madison Avenue. And that creates a situation where it goes all the way up to where Greenwood has in their downtown several different restaurants and some park systems and some other things. And this is gonna marry in with some of that. So we've got in the very middle, let me see if this shows. There we go. This is an old school, I should say former school, that Greenwood had, and that school system moved to another location, but they kept the gym, so the gym is being expanded. So now that is going to become, for the Greenwood community, a nice amenity so that they'll have some community space and some gym space and some other things. And then wrapping around that, we have some residential, some for sale, some for rent residential, and then also some retail. And again, I only point these out just because these are things that we worked with those particular communities on. And then moving forward, we'd like to work obviously with the Westfield community on some things. As I mentioned before, let me get your bearings. This is, sorry, it was easier to put it diagonally. So 32 is here, north is this direction. So you've got Dave Brown, and we've got 31, and then just off of this is where you have the access, obviously, onto 32. The Westfield Millennium PUD is very large because it goes all the way from this part at the south end all the way just to, this is where Park Street is. So you've got the Midland Trace Trail. And within this, what we're simply trying to do at this stage is to allow a little bit of flexibility in some of the uses. What was approved before was a multifamily / multi-use here. Same thing in this area, and then commercial in these. So what we'd like to do is to have some flexibility with where some of these uses go. At the same time, we'd like to expand some of the definitions, so potentially we could have more of a for sale, like a townhome product in this area, which I think will be probably a better use for some of the neighbors in this area. So essentially, I know that this is just the initial introduction, and we'll have the APC and back to council for something more rigorous at the next meeting. So I just wanted to share a little bit about our company, about what the PUD is, and about what we'd like to do. Going forward, we are going to set up a neighborhood meeting specifically with some of the neighbors in the area before the APC. And then the APC will obviously happen with the public hearing, then we'll be back for council. So I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you have questions for me to answer at the APC and the council, I'd be happy to do that too. Thank you for your time.
I have one question, if I might.
Yes, sir.
Is it appropriate now? Yeah. If we expand that out, is there going to be some kind of a limitation on how much that can be used for multifamily use? Or is this going to be wide open where the entire development could go multifamily?
No, Mr. Willis, there are certain limits on exactly how many units and things like that. We're only looking for a little bit of flexibility in how what the boundaries are.
Thank you.
But the limits, the architecture, the buffers, everything else stays exactly the same that's in the PUD.
Perfect, thank you, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. George. Look forward to seeing you at the APC.
Great, thank you.
Next item tonight is ordinance 21-34, the Urban Apples PUD, which is up for council introduction this evening. And I think, Pam?
Yes, thank you again. Pam Howard with the Community Development Department. Before you this evening for an introduction, we have a proposed new PUD district to be known as Urban Apples. This 24-acre site is located at 18326 Spring Mill Road and is currently zoned AGSF1 with an approved variance for a wine processing facility. The proposed ordinance contains standards to accommodate expansion of the existing use to a larger agritourism use. I do have Matt Skelton here on behalf of the petitioner who would like to make a presentation, after which both he and I will be available for questions. Thank you.
Good evening, members of the council. Pardon me. For the record, Matt Skelton with Church Hidland Antrim, with offices at 116 North Union Street here in town. With me this evening with Urban Apples LLC is Noah Herron, Michael Hayner, and Mark Rupenthal here sitting behind me. We're here this evening for the introduction of the Urban Apples PUD. It's a 23.71 acre site on Spring Mill Road, just south of where Sundown Gardens is, just south of 186th Street. The proposal includes several uses. It's designed to be an agritourism destination. We include an apple orchard area that will be used in conjunction with part of the cidery on site. A production facility for alcoholic and non-alcoholic beverages, which was part of a land use approval that was received last September for the area in the large facility in the northeast corner of that site. It's an existing barn facility that will be rehabilitated. You can see the cidery immediately west, conveniently labeled cidery. That will be a refurbished facility as well. It's an existing structure. The proposal includes tasting rooms, food offerings, picnic areas, play areas, lawn and music area in the middle of the site, and some interactive spaces for really it's going to be small farm-like animals, goats and potbelly pig type of interactive opportunities for kids. It also includes in the area labeled seeds, it includes a new building planned there for an existing Westfield business, Urban Seeds, which is a specialty, today mostly mail order specialty seed business. It would, at this location, we would hope that we'd be able to expand that and have a little bit of retail associated with it too, but it will remain largely mail order. We've spent some time memorializing how these various components that are shown on your screen will be utilized on the site. That's all included in the materials before you, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as you like, but this is largely communicated here on the plan that you have before you as well. We've also incorporated standards that would require thematic consistency of the structures within the development. So even the existing structures, as they're rehabilitated, will be done so in a manner that is thematically consistent. So they will be the same colors and same shapes and same types of materials will be used throughout. Just to remind if this site looks familiar to you, in May of last year, this real estate was part of a larger proposal that appeared before you in May of last year. It actually made most of its way through the Plan Commission. I think Mr. Johns and Mrs. Spaljarek probably have a strong recollection of this proposal, but I think the project actually got to the point where there was just a handful of things that really needed to be tidied up. And I think most immediately at the time, there was a need to have the land use entitlement for the production facility in the northeast corner of the site. That was really top priority. So the thought process was move forward, go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, obtain the land use approval, and then come back and address the entire remainder of the site at a later time, which is why we're before you now. So a few things have changed in this area since this real estate was before you for an entitlement process. The this real estate has been platted. It went through a platting process earlier this year. It's about 30% smaller than it was when you saw it last. The 10 acres along the northern, could you put the one of the vicinity maps up, please? There you go. That northern piece that's being highlighted has been purchased by Sundown Gardens for future use. So the real estate is somewhat smaller, about 30% smaller. There was originally proposed a lodging component in the PUD that was before you. That is not included in this proposal. This is all non-residential agritourism type of uses included in this proposal. Another thing that has changed, if you'll recall, the real estate to the west and to the south of the site has all been platted as well. It's in the process of being platted as a neighborhood called Somerset, Silverthorne. You mind highlighting the two pieces? Yeah, that long piece and then the piece to the south there have all been zoned as part of a neighborhood called Somerset by Silverthorne. We worked with Silverthorne while they were going through the process. So that they knew about us, and then they're working with us as we move through this process. So, and we have been in communications with Sundown as well. I think that concludes my presentation. We will be scheduling a neighborhood meeting, and we'll certainly get that date to you as soon as it gets pinned down. It'll be before the Plan Commission hearing, which is scheduled for the first week of August, I believe. And then, but we look forward to working with the Plan Commission and would certainly entertain any questions or comments that you have preliminarily here. Thank you.
Councilors? Comments? Matt, we look forward to seeing you at the APC.
Thank you.
The next ordinance up for introduction this evening is ordinance 21-35, which is a Spring Mill Trails PUD amendment. It's up for council introduction this evening. And we've got Rachel, our newest planner, is going to do the introduction.
Thank you. Good evening, council. For the record, Rachel Remenschneider with the Community Development Department. The item presented before you tonight is an amendment to the Spring Mill Trail PUD district originally approved in 2011. The proposal is for the 11-acre property east of Ditch Road and west of Casey Road. This PUD amendment proposing changing the permitted uses to include townhomes. This item is here for an introduction only. John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger and other representatives are here tonight to present details of the project. They are available to answer any questions, as am I, if you should have any for staff. Thank you.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll just reduce that just a little bit, and then I'll just ask you in advance. Good evening, members of the council. For the record, John Dabashewitz with Nelson and Frankenberger. We represent the petitioner, Platinum Properties Management Company, LLC. Present tonight on their behalf is Paul Rio of Platinum Properties, as well as Jim Schinover, an attorney with our office. As noted, the matter before you this evening is an introduction of an amendment to the mixed-use district of the Spring Mill Trails PUD. As indicated by staff and identified on the aerial, on the left-hand side, outlined in orange, is the real estate. It's approximately 11 acres in size and is located between Ditch Road on its west perimeter and Casey Road on its east perimeter on the south corner of the roundabout. As shown, uses surrounding the real estate on the image on the right include residential subdivisions, including but not limited to Gristmill Trails, Water's Edge, and Spring Orchard to the north, as well as Northview Christian Church further to the north next to 186th Street. Orchard View and Woodbury Ridge neighborhoods are to the east. Casey Acres Apartments community along our south perimeter, and Gristmill Villas is a subdivision to the west of the site on the west side of Ditch Road. Kevin, if you could advance, please. The applicant has filed a text amendment application to allow the development of a for-sale residential townhome community consisting of approximately 80 homes. On display is the concept plan for the townhome community. As shown, homes will front Ditch Road with garages to the rear facing away from the street. The photograph on the right-hand side illustrates the front of the homes and the character which would face Ditch Road. The elevations, which are above that photograph, are of home product which has garages and front doors which would face interior streets, but again, not along Ditch Road. Again, no garages of homes will face Ditch Road. They would face the internal street. Those are the units that are the lighter color of the two. Those would face Ditch Road, and then the darker homes, those are the ones represented in the elevations at the top right hand of the exhibit. Anticipated average sale prices are estimated between $275,000 and $325,000 in price. The current zoning of the infill site is pursuant to the Spring Mill Trails PUD ordinance as indicated by staff. It was adopted in 2011. The real estate as currently zoned would permit the development of as many as 150 apartment units, as well as various business uses. However, townhomes, for sale townhomes, aren't a permitted use within that particular district. That's the reason we're before you this evening to ask for an amendment to the PUD that would facilitate the development of the residential for sale neighborhood. It's Platinum's belief that the rezoning of the real estate to permit a residential townhome community rather than apartments would be beneficial for sale residential transition between the single-family neighborhoods which exist to the north and to the east, and the apartment community and further further commercial development to the south. In conclusion, the matter is scheduled for a public hearing before the Planning Commission on August the 2nd. Additionally, we've scheduled a neighborhood meeting. That neighborhood meeting will occur at 6:30 on July the 27th, and we'll conduct that virtually. Later this week, I'll send out to the council an invitation with a link to that meeting, as well as staff, so you'd have the opportunity to attend. We appreciate your time this evening. We would respectfully request the council forward this matter to the Planning Commission for a public hearing on August the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Council, questions? Comments?
I'll say one thing, going back the years, there was supposed to be a mixed-use component in this PUD, and that's not the way the whole thing is played out. And now with two apartment communities, it would seem like not a great decision to do yet another apartment community in that location. I have talked with a few residents in the area, and it seems like there is support right now for the townhomes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is just a classic infill development, and I think it's a reasonable use right now. So I look forward to hearing more at the APC. Thank you, John. That's it. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for your time this evening.
All right. Next item on our agenda is our guest period. Any residents who wish to address the council may come forth and do so at this point in time. Kevin, do we have any cards?
No, sir.
Do not, okay. We had any comments online tonight?
I've not received any emails either. Thanks.
All right. Moving forward, then we'll look to city council comments. I think Joe Edwards, Oversight Committee. Joe, you have a couple comments maybe?
None.
Okay. Finance Committee, comments?
No, we had a good meeting. We addressed a few different things. We had the library board present to us. That was good. We did talk about accounting for revenues with Grant Park, and I think we'll save that for the next presentation from William. And then obviously working with Chris Wilkes, North Point. That was really good, so.
All right. Cindy, report on the APC?
Sure. The APC did meet Tuesday, July 6th, due to the holiday. And on our consent agenda, we approved a detailed development plan for 169th Street Industrial, which is 2 buildings on almost 6 acres on the north side of 169th east of Oak Ridge Road. And we did hold public hearings for several overall development plans, Compton subdivision, which is near 156th and Spring Mill, Chatham Villages South, Union Square, and the Mule Barn Road Commercial Subdivision for IMI, which also had a hearing for its associated PUD. That's it.
Thank you. Scott Lewis?
No, well, just a quick update on the library. We're in the remonstration period right now. We're nearing the back end of that. We're not hearing any noise at this point, so we're feeling good that that's not going to happen. If it doesn't, you can expect the library to be here in the coming probably month or two for city council approval on the bond.
Scott Fry?
None, thank you.
Mayor's not here tonight. I was going to ask him. Manny, do you know, how do we stand with respect to the mayor appointing a 3rd member of the Audit Search Committee and also an internal control person?
Yeah, I'll start with the last one. The internal control, I believe Mr. Edwards and I were gonna work the phones to try to get a sense for what Fishers and Indy did. I have an answer from Indy, from the former legal department, is that he's 90% sure that it was not a separately budgeted position. I should have confirmation tomorrow, so it doesn't have to necessarily be set out. It can be, certainly. Doesn't necessarily have to be set out as a separately budgeted position. And I don't know about the appointment to the audit committee,
Right.
but I can check in with the mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm hoping by our next meeting, we'll have those 2 resolved so we can move forward with that.
Right, I just saw here, I don't know if Mr. Edwards, have you heard from either on?
No.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty confident by tomorrow we'll have at least a 100% answer on Indianapolis, and then Fishers will follow after that. I'll pass that on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments from the council? All right, then, do I have a motion to suspend the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Motion made by Scott Fry, seconded by Jake Gilbert. Cindy, would you call the roll, please?
Scott Fry,
Yes.
Joe Edwards,
Yes.
Jake Gilbert,
Yes.
Scott Willis,
I guess that's me, yes?
yes. Mike Johns,
Yes.
Troy Patton,
Yes.
Cindy Spalcheri.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.